It's a brand new year with which we welcome you to Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Norman Goodfellows. A new year which I'm sure for most of you involved some bubbles to kick off 2025 and say goodbye to 2024, which was a pretty good year for bubbles. If you remember the conversation at the end of last year with Michael Fridge on one of the spaces he was most complimentary about was South African bubbles. And that is down to the work that our top producers have done over the last few years to really lift this particular category. And one in particular is a good friend of mine from Franschhoek, Paul Herber from Colmant. Welcome back to the show. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2025. I'm imagining that one or two bottles of bubbles did slip down as we said goodbye to last year and hello to this year. When I spoke to Michael Fridge on at the end of last year, we discussed the gap between champagne and Cup Classique, not just in terms of quality, but also in terms of perception. The person who would only have drunk French champagne because that is what one must be seen to be drinking, now drinking Cup Classique because people don't just realize how good it is, but also know that the understanding of how good it is more widespread. Have you seen that with Colmant? Are you seeing that where in the past it was, well, champagne is here and Cup Classique is down here, that gap really has shrunk? Final reference to my conversation with Michael Fridge on, and I bring it back because he made so many great points, was the importance of viticulture and how he feels that our Cup Classique producers have really made a big effort in the vineyard and not just in the cellar. How much focus do you guys place on this space? How much have you seen an improvement for Colmant in the vineyards before you've even hit that cellar? I remember our very first conversation included the discussion of your former role as a maths teacher, and you decided to chuck it all in, and to the horror of your wife, decided to become a winemaker. I suspect she's very happy now because she gets to drink your bubbles regularly. You've had plenty of time now to reflect on it as we go into a new year. Are there ever any mornings when you wake up and thinking, oh, you know, making bubbles is okay, but gee, I wish I was teaching algebra today? I think you made a very wise decision and inspired all of us, Paul. We talk about cellar palate in conversations with winemakers and how winemakers go out of their way to drink other people's wine so as not to just have that sense of your own. Give that to us in the context of bubbles. Are there days when sometimes, you know what, I actually can't face another glass of bubbles. I just want a glass of cab, or I want a cold beer, I want something different, or is every day a bubbles day? And those decisions will lead into what 2025 has for us. Harvest is on the immediate horizon. I can see you've been doing some light stretching and gym work in preparation. It's a tough run for our winemakers as they get the year underway. What's it going to lead to in 2025? Are there some new releases in store? Are there some new wine adventures that Paul Herber has in mind for the Colmant brand? All systems go. I'm overdue a visit. I know we caught up briefly at the launch of Marble in Cape Town at the end of last year, and you fixed me with that steely John Dobson-like glare of yours and asked me why I hadn't been to visit. So I shall be down to visit soon. Look forward to meeting the new team, seeing some new developments, and as always, sharing some absolutely fabulous bubbles with you, Paul. We do indeed. The man who said goodbye to teaching maths and hello to making bubbles. And on behalf of every single bubbles lover on the planet, Paul Gerber, we are most grateful for it. Well, the bubbles of Franschhoek are well established. It's not just Paul Gerber and his bubbles at Colmant. Lelude, as a house that only does bubbles, is getting an increasingly appreciated name around the world. The bubbles at Haute Cabrières are well known for good reason. Taquan following in his father's footsteps. And then there's the bubbles that come out of Black Elephant. But I must, before we ask about bubbles, inquire of Jacques Wenzel, who joins us on the show with great delight from our part. Jacques, I think the last time I saw you, you weren't wearing quite so much, and you did appear to be in a bathtub with two other men. Talk us through this. And they are delightful. And yes, there's some silliness to them, but you just have a great deal of fun. And I think that talks to your brand, where there is a great deal of fun to it, but there's also some really serious wine and quite a serious team behind all the smiles and laughter. And just as you're bringing together the different components of Cup Classique with all wine when you're blending it to make something special, so you guys as a team do seem to have not just a really special bond, but a wonderfully shared philosophy on how you want to approach wine and how you want to give your wine to the world. And as a result, it's brought us some terrific wine, and specifically today for our conversation, some great bubbles. And it has become a real signature, and I think people notice them initially. You've got really striking branding, the labeling always looks great, but it's once you dive into an actual glass, you discover something really special. And the focus on creating great bubbles sits with, I think, where we find ourselves in South Africa at the moment, where that gap between Cup Classique and Champagne has narrowed considerably. Not that we're trying to replicate Champagne, but in terms of people looking for quality bubbles and looking for brands that really appeal to them, I think you guys are very much at the forefront of creating something that is so special in terms of celebrating sparkling wine in South Africa. I'm glad you mentioned the zero dosage because it's probably my favorite of the bubbles you offer. And it's an interesting counterpoint to a trend that's going especially up here in Johannesburg, where the nectar style, the sweeter style, is gaining massive traction. And yet here at the same time, you are right the other end of that scale. This is absolutely bone dry Karoo in summer style Cup Classique, and yet it's picking up this growing audience that I think is not just picking it up because there's a bit of a novelty factor and we'll try a bottle and move on, but people are buying this by the case because it is becoming a firm favourite. You've done a splendid job thus far, much as you have with all of your terrific videos. Now there'll be great content and great wine to come in 2025. As you look to the year ahead and what's coming, you've got a harvest on the horizon. Can we expect anything new, different, exciting from the Black Elephant team in the bottle, as opposed to just videos in certain degrees of undress with beaming smiles? Well, good luck with it, and together with Raymond and Kevin, keeping us entertained with both bottle and video. I'm sure there'll be some cycling getting in as well. You'll have spotted, I'm sure, the various races in the background there that Jacques has been through. All the best for the harvest coming up, and thank you. I think you maintain our track record of being the only guest we've ever had on the show born on Robben Island, and I'm not sure that's going to change anytime soon. But all the best for harvest, and thanks for joining us, Jacques. Thank you very much, Jacques Wenzel, the vintner of Black Elephant Vintners, and the man who, amongst many other things, makes that zero dosage. If you haven't tried it yet, if you like a slightly drier style, or if you just haven't ever tried a zero dosage before, give it a go. But give it a go with a warning, because you will be smitten rather quickly and making regular orders at Norman Goodfellows to stock up with some world-class South African bubbles. During the course of last year, we included on Dan Really Likes Wine some bubbles from Plet, the Newstead brand, which is one of several that we are going to be seeing more and more of, I suspect, in South Africa over the next few years. And we go to Plet for some more bubbles, but this time not from Plet itself, but rather because the winemaker in question happens to be on what looks like an incredible summer holiday. Henk van Eko from Poor Renée, lovely to have you back on the show. Tell us where you are and how 2025 is starting, because it looks to be a pretty good beginning to the new year for you.
Yes, Dan, so Plet has been our beach holiday of choice for many years, and this is where we spent our Christmas and New Year's. We'd like to pack up now and head back to the farm, but it's been a lovely, awesome summer holiday for us, and but also now looking forward to going back to the farm. Should be there tomorrow and get ready for the harvest.
You have a harvest that begins, that focuses on bubbles and bubbles alone, and you're one of a small but growing number of producers who only do bubbles. This is very much your focus. It has been ever since we first met years ago out in Robertson. Is that still the absolute love? Are you still as enamoured and in love with bubbles as you were when we first met years ago?
So bubbles has always been a focus for Poor Renée from the beginning, as you say. So it's from 2009 vintage. Poor Renée was born out of the love of bubbles, and today that is still our dream and our vision. It hasn't changed. We don't produce any other wines. Poor Renée's bubbles only, and we're growing our bubbly range. And you know, so yes, we're growing, but it's not. It's not outside of the bubbly business, it's in the bubbly business, so it's what we like, it's what we love, and you can expect to see the Poor Renée bubbly range expanding soon in 2025, but it's definitely our focus. It's always been, the region that we are in lends it to producing good bubbles. It's the backyard for Chardonnay.
Tell me about Robertson for you as a home to bubbles. What is it about this quiet, sleepy little part of South Africa that has given birth to so many world-class brands of bubbles in South Africa?
So Robertson is definitely the backyard for producing bubbles and particularly growing Chardonnay. But we've also had great success in producing Pinot Noir in the region. And we like to tell the world how great our terroir here is in Robertson, but the proof of the pudding is all the other wineries that are quite happy to buy our fruit from this region. So it's a testimony not only to from the Robertson producers, but also from other regions, thinking that we produce quite good fruit for making bubbles.
There'll be more of that exceptional wine coming, I'm sure, because the harvest is almost upon us. You're going to have to say goodbye to your holiday and get back into the cellar, back into the vineyards. 2025, how's it looking? How excited are you for this year's harvest?
So 2025, the vintage is a few days away, so we're very excited about that. It's going to be interesting. It has been a sort of an uneven budding, flowering season, so that would lead to uneven ripening. Which is something we'll have to navigate. It can all turn out very good, but we'll have to pay some attention to that. So that will be the first thing I'll do when I get back. do some sampling and see how we can sort of work our way through this uneven ripens. But that happens, we every year is a different vintage, so this one is it's exciting time. We can't wait to get going, but it will be different. So we'll see how that goes. And then also, what is exciting about this new 2025 is possibly a new release of something different. I can't tell you now, but there might be something more in the Blanc and more in the Brit region, something possibly with less sugar, but you'll have to wait and see. That's possibly after winter we'll get to that. But it's a few plans and ideas that we've been working on for a few years now, so the bottles are aging in the cellar, but it should be released later this year. But we'll keep you posted on that.
All right, well, there we go. There is your update on another of my favourite champagne style houses, Cup Classique at its very best. Paul Renée, a little boutique spot in Robertson. It's well worth visiting. It's tiny. They make great wine when they're not having wonderful holidays in Plett, of which I am most jealous. Enjoy what's left of it, and thank you, Henk, to you and your team, joining us on the show, giving us such great bubbles, and giving us some insight into what has made Paul Renée such a sought-after South African brand. As we wrap up our look at bubbles heading into 2025, on the back of such a good year for all things effervescent, we head to one of the homes of South African Cup Classique that does two important things. It makes it very well, and it makes it in considerable volumes, and that is very important for a reason I'll come to in a moment. But let's start with far more important things, and that is celebration, because Danielle Coetzee, you head into 2025 as a relatively new mum, and yes, you've made some amazing wine over the years and will continue to do, but this is without doubt the greatest triumph. You've had, I think, 4 months or thereabouts of maturing the little member of the family. How's he going, and how are you finding motherhood?
Hi, Dan. It's been absolutely wonderful. And your little one is now 3.5 months and doing great. It's really, I think when we talk about wine, a lot of the time there is this kind of narrative that we treat them like our children, and especially with Cap Classique, I mean, it's a maturation process, and it takes time and it takes patience. But the one thing that I've learned is having an actual baby is a completely different challenge, but it's wonderful, and he's just the best.
Oh, congratulations. It's a wonderful addition to the family. A family that does, though, really include the bubbles. And I remember the first time we met, we spoke about bubbles. Your eyes just lit up, and it was clear that I had encountered somebody for whom making sparkling wine was more than just a job. And I think with most winemakers, you can't do what you do with a certain level of passion. But in bubbles, you really have found something that taps right into your DNA.
It's the one thing that I mean, with bubbles, there's nothing of the process and of the final product that I don't absolutely love and love working with. And the process itself, how you see those changes and small tweaks and how that affects the final product. But also, I think because it is a labor of love, but also patience, that it's so much more rewarding when you do open that bottle and you get to experience the wine. And I think, especially with Boschendal, with our focus on cool climate vineyards, how we've kind of fine-tuned and made sure that we have the right selection of vineyards, and in cool areas. So seeing that kind of come through, and how just well integrated that bubble is, because essentially at the end of the day, it is the bubble that makes it so unique. But I mean, the bubble and how it's influenced is, it's really a science in itself. So I mean, it stays interesting, and every year is new challenges and new things to learn.
You reference patience. You need patience more than most, because at Boschendal, you've really pushed out the envelope in terms of giving your Cup Classique time to come to the fore. You're almost up at a decade with some of the wines. Is that something that comes naturally to you, or do you kind of kick around the cellar, willing it to move faster, willing it to get to that ideal moment just a little quicker?
The I think it's one thing that you do learn with the more harvests you do and the more productions you've worked with, from filling, from harvest to filling, maturation, that you do start. I mean, it's a long time. 10 years is, for our genre long, is, it's a long time. So I mean, once you see that first cycle coming through, of the wine that you saw through from harvest into bottling, it really does become a process where you have the patience. But it is kind of, I mean, it's a bit of an in between, because you also taste throughout. And sometimes, I mean, yeah, with certain harvests, with vintages, you're really excited very early on because you know you're working with something special. But I mean, every year it's just, yeah, fantastic to see and work with. But I do have my moments where I am impatient because I'm excited to see the release of the vintage. But on the other hand, what I also enjoy about the non-vintage is that consistency, and also the blending process behind that, where you see the changes and you see the vintage influence, but it's very fine. But what you want and what you also appreciate in the non-vintage is that consistency on the style and on the how the wine shows in flavor and profile at the end.
We do tend to value vintage more. Oh, it's a great year, it's a specific year, it's showing off what made that particular year special. But for me, of all the winemaking talents, making a non-vintage has to be up there with any of them, because you have to be able to create something that if I'm drinking this year or I'm drinking in 10 years' time, I know straight away, haha, that is a bottle of the Boschendal that I've always loved. How tricky is that element of it to be able to consistently give that house style, even though every year is a bit different?
I think, and like you mentioned, some people value vintage more, and we do tend to see that vintage classiques are priced slightly higher. In the Boschendal range, our vintage is our Grand Cuvées are 3 year lease age, and well, minimum of 3 years, with an average of, well, in the last three vintages we've done 5 years on lease, and then our Jean Long being our 10 year lease age. Where our non-vintage, so there is also an aspect of price due to cost of keeping a wine for so long, and also the vineyard allocation for that. Those are both 100% Elgin sites, so really, really top end premium vineyard selections going into that as well. Also with our non-vintage, we have that cool selection, coastal sites coming in from West Coast side, Cape Town, more mostly on Stellenbosch, especially with the Pinot Noirs, and then also a bit of Elgin going in. But I mean, the craft and the continuity, maintaining that with a non-vintage, it's a skill, and it's not something we take lightly when we go into blending. Our whole team, myself, Charles, and Jacques Viljoen, is involved with that process, as well as Dominique, Modena, and then it's really getting, and also that what we've spoken of in the past, that kind of that glass ball, that kind of being able to, from what the wine, the base wine is showing now, be able to a certain extent, foresee what it will show in future. But we have found our house style in having that it's a minerality, but it's also a fruit expression. So, and it's a wine that it's not, it's clean, and we also always want the wine to show really well-made precision winemaking, but we do want that fine brioche mousse, those autolytics coming through as well. I tend to think of, especially with the non-vintage, the Classique, the Chardonnay Pinot, that there's also this kind of a lemony cream. I always have that biscuit reference in my back of my head when I taste the wine as well, where you have a bit of that biscuit influence, that autolytic character coming through, but it has a kind of a zesty, zippy acidity without being kind of too tight. We don't want the non-vintage to be too acidic. The high acidity is more for our vintage styles, because with that time on lease, you get that rounding out on the palate.
I did tell you there were bubbles in the DNA of Danielle Kutz here. That makes it really clear indeed. I'm actually looking at a bottle here. This goes back to 2015, which I've taken out to have a little later on today. And it is a brand that I have come to know really well and admire for many reasons. But the final one of them, and I alluded to it at the start of the conversation, was the scale. And I think a big drive of Boschendal, of DGB as a whole, has been how can we create premium at scale? How do we do what somebody like Penfolds has done, where we're able to offer a volume of wine but not compromise on the quality? You guys are able to make bubbles in some quite significant numbers, and yet I've never had a bottle I'm going, oh no, I think they might be making too much of this. I think they're losing their touch. That's not the case. I know that you're doing that. I'm just not sure how. How as a team are you able to continue to deliver really big volumes of bubbles and yet still not compromise on that final product?
I think the one big drive behind that has been our, not only from the winemaker side. I mean, for us, it's always about quality and maintaining that, but it's been a whole focus for Boschendal and the DGB brand to focus on quality production at a scale where it's maintainable for that quality, because we don't want that. And you do sometimes come across that where a brand has grown to some extent and then you see that quality drop off because of volume increase, and having to source from areas that are maybe not true to the style that they've been producing. But from our vineyard team, Heine now with our grape selection, our side selection, Stefan Hubert, Jock, myself, Charles, our production side, quality, logistics. So everyone is very committed, marketing, to what is it that Boschendal represents. And with that is a legacy of being the second producer of Classique in South Africa, but also is maintaining that quality as being not really a benchmark, but that people that we have distribution internationally, that when people pick up a bottle of Boschendal, they know they're getting good quality consistently, and not just kind of skimming the top, or kind of just coming through with, this is what we can pass as good quality, but having a really keen focus on the style that we want for Boschendal Cap Classique, but then also vineyard selection. And I think that's always the one thing that it comes back to, is where you can't make good wine without good fruit. And I mean, that is such it's been a thing that's been told over and over again, but it's true. I mean, you need the good ingredients. So that's really one of the focus points. So it's really been a group effort, and a focus for us, something that we feel passionate about, that I'm very passionate about. And like Peter Ferrara's also said, you want to get liquid to lips. So having that quality at a scale where you can reach new customers is something that is really important.
You're doing it very, very successfully indeed, and following in the footsteps of people like Achim von Arnhem and continuing this proud tradition of bubbles at Boschendal. Keep up the terrific work. Enjoy as much rest as you can before harvest, because the combination of harvest and small child will certainly require possibly an extra glass or two of bubbles in the morning to get you through the days. But good luck with it, and as always, thank you so much for being part of the show.
Thank you very much, Dan.
So there we go. As we head into 2025, harvest almost upon us, plenty to celebrate, whether it's new members of the family, great South African wine, or what lies ahead for the wine year. There is absolutely zero doubt in my mind that Cap Classique in South Africa has never been better. and that drinking it, celebrating it, and enjoying it is exactly what you should be doing plenty of in the year ahead.